The pain of procrastination is not actually about the work you haven't done. It is about the silent erosion of who you know you could be. 2,000 years ago, the Roman military did not have a word for procrastination in the way we use it today. They had a word for the condition that causes it, and they treated it as a tactical failure of the state. They called it a lack of Severitas, Disciplina, and Industria. To a Roman commander, putting off a task wasn't a personality quirk or a sign you needed a nap. It was a dereliction of duty, a signal that the internal governance of the soldier had collapsed. The curiosity here is that the Romans viewed this failure not as a lack of motivation, but as a lack of structural integrity in the mind. You feel this every time you open a tab you don't need or scroll through a feed you don't care about. That specific sensation of numbness in your limbs and the low hum of anxiety in your chest is not you being lazy. It is you failing to govern your own territory. To understand why the Roman system works where modern motivation fails, we have to look at what happens when you try to solve this the modern way. And today, the story of Kevin Taylor will prove it to you. The summer heat in Memphis, Tennessee hangs heavy in the air, a physical weight that seems to press down on the roofs of the sprawling logistics hubs that dot the city landscape. Inside a small, dimly lit apartment off Summer Avenue, the air conditioning unit rattles in a losing battle against the humidity. Kevin Taylor, 23 years old, sits at a desk that is less a workspace and more a monument to stalled intent. He is a logistics coordinator for a regional shipping firm, a job that requires him to orchestrate the movement of freight across state lines with precision and timing. Yet in his own life, the coordinates are always shifting and the shipments are always late. The room tells the story before he does. A half-empty cup of coffee sits on a coaster made of an old utility bill. A stack of textbooks regarding supply chain management gathers dust near a lamp that flickers intermittently. The peeling wallpaper near the window frame curls inward, a small but persistent reminder of entropy, the tendency for things to fall apart when left unattended. Kevin is not a stranger to ambition. He has the artifacts to prove it. A pristine notebook lies open to a page dated 3 weeks ago, the header reading Career Strategy, Phase 1 in bold, confident letters. Below it, nothing. Blank lines that stretch down to the bottom of the page, like an empty highway. Beside the notebook sits a tablet, displaying a popular productivity app, the interface color-coded with terrifying efficiency. Green bars represent completed tasks, but the screen is mostly a sea of red and orange, visual evidence of promises broken to himself. He has tried the modern solutions. He has listened to the podcasts that tell him to eat the frog and the YouTube gurus who insist that waking up at 4:00 fame will solve his problems. He has tried the Pomodoro technique, setting a timer for 25 minutes of focus, only to find himself checking his phone during the first break and losing 3 hours to the infinite scroll of social media. The specific failure of the 5-second rule haunts him. He remembers the moment clearly. He had intended to apply for a certification program that would guarantee a raise. He counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then he just didn't move. He sat there, hand hovering over the mouse, paralyzed by a sudden, overwhelming fatigue that felt like wet cement in his veins. It wasn't that he didn't want the raise. It was that the urge to remain still was suddenly stronger than the urge to advance. This is the failure of modern productivity advice. It treats the symptom, the delay, rather than the underlying collapse of self-governance. Kevin looks at the screen now, his email inbox open, a notification blinking for a report that was due yesterday. He feels the familiar knot in his stomach, the tightening of the chest that signals another small defeat. He tells himself he will do it after lunch, then after dinner, then tomorrow. The lie is seductive because it is comfortable. He begins to believe the problem is not his system, but his soul. Maybe he is just lazy. Maybe he is just not cut out for the discipline required to move up in the world. He leans back in his chair, the cheap plastic groaning under his weight, and stares at the ceiling fan as it wobbles in its rotation, a mechanical metaphor for his own spinning but stationary existence. The catalyst arrives not with a bang but with a dull thud. A thick envelope lands on his desk at work, slid there by his supervisor with a look of practiced indifference. It is a notification of a performance review. scheduled for the end of the month. The implications are clear. If Kevin cannot demonstrate that he has taken initiative on the regional optimization project, a task he has been avoiding for weeks, the promotion he has been banking on will go to someone else, someone who can execute. He shoves the envelope into his bag and ignores it, deciding instead to take a walk during his lunch break, escaping the sterile environment of the warehouse office for the dusty haze of the Memphis afternoon. He finds himself walking with no destination, a man drifting, until he stops in front of a building he has passed 100 times but never entered. It is a martial arts academy, but the sign out front is faded, reading simply "The Dojo" in stark black lettering. There is no music blaring from inside, no crowds, just the rhythmic sound of a heavy bag being struck. He doesn't know why he pushes the door open. Perhaps it is boredom, perhaps it is the desperate need to be anywhere but inside his own head. The interior of the space is a shock to the senses. It is cool, quiet, and smells faintly of sawdust and old leather. The contrast to the chaotic digital noise of his job is immediate. There is no fluorescent lighting, only natural light filtering through high windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. In the center of the room stands an older man, Frank. He is not large, but he possesses a stillness that Kevin has never encountered in another human being. Frank is organizing a set of weights. His movements are deliberate and economical. He does not look up immediately. He lets the silence stretch, filling the room until it becomes its own presence. Kevin feels the urge to fill the void with chatter, with an explanation for his intrusion, but he finds he cannot. The silence demands respect. Frank finally turns. His posture is erect, his gaze direct but not unkind. He looks at Kevin with the eyes of someone who sees the chaos before he hears the excuse. He does not ask Kevin why he is here. He does not offer a sales pitch for membership. He simply observes the slump in Kevin's shoulders, the nervous way his thumb rubs against the strap of his bag. When Frank speaks, his voice is low and carries the weight of stone. "You are early for the evening class," Frank says. It is not a question. Kevin stammers, explaining he is just looking, maybe thinking about joining. He mentions he needs to get in shape, maybe clear his head for work. He uses the vague language of maybe and trying that modern people use to cushion their intentions. Frank listens without moving. He picks up a heavy iron weight and sets it down on a mat. The sound is a dull thud that vibrates through the floor. "Your body is here," Frank says. "Your mind is still at the door." He pauses, letting the observation land. "You came here to escape the feeling of being late. Late for work, late for your life." Kevin feels the words like a physical blow. He denies it, but the denial is weak. He mentions his job, the report he needs to file, and the goals he has. He talks about his ambition to be a logistics manager, to organize systems. Frank holds up a hand, cutting off the flow of words. "If you truly desired to organize systems, you would not be standing in my doorway avoiding your desk." The question hangs in the air, simple and devastating. "What are you protecting yourself from?" Kevin blinks. He has no answer. He thinks of the performance review, the fear of failure, but also the deeper, quieter fear of effort. He realizes he doesn't know. He protects himself from the discomfort of the task, but in doing so, he protects himself from his own potential. "Ask yourself that," Frank says, turning back to the weights. "Come back tomorrow at dawn. If you find the answer, I will teach you how to move." He dismisses Kevin with a slight turn of his shoulder, the conversation over. "What are you protecting yourself from?" The question echoes in Kevin's mind as he walks back to his car. It is a question that bypasses the superficial logic of productivity apps. It strikes at the heart of the Roman concept of Severitas, or severity and seriousness. The Romans understood that before one could have discipline, Disciplina, one had to have the gravity to face reality. Kevin spends the afternoon pretending to work, the open loop of the question gnawing at him. He realizes he has been protecting himself from the possibility of his own incompetence. If he tries and fails, he is a failure. If he never tries, he is just lazy. Laziness is a safer label than incapacity. The next morning, Kevin returns to the dojo at dawn. The sky is a bruised purple over the Mississippi River. Frank is already there, sweeping the floor with a broom made of straw. The repetitive motion is hypnotic. Swish, swish. Kevin stands in the doorway, waiting for instructions. He expects a lecture on mindset or a motivational speech. He gets neither. Frank stops sweeping. He looks at Kevin. Did you find the answer? Kevin nods slowly. I'm afraid I can't do it. Frank shows no reaction. Good. Honesty is the first wall of the fortress. He gestures to the floor. Sweep. Kevin stares. He is a logistics coordinator. He manages routes and drivers. He does not sweep floors for free. The indignity of it flares in his chest. He almost leaves. But the memory of the missed deadline, the red notification light on his phone, and the crushing weight of his own stagnation hold him in place. He takes the broom. He begins to sweep. This is the first teaching, though Kevin does not know it yet. The Roman virtue of industria, industry or diligent work, was not about the grandeur of the task. It was about the refusal to be idle. The Romans did not believe in waiting for inspiration. They believed that action preceded motivation. Frank is forcing Kevin to engage in a physical, mundane action to bypass the paralysis of his intellect. Kevin sweeps for an hour. His back aches. His mind wanders to the emails piling up in his inbox. He thinks about the optimization project. He sweats. He feels foolish. But as the hour passes, something shifts. The rhythm of the sweeping clears a space in his mind. The anxiety, which usually sits on his chest like a panicked animal, begins to settle. He starts to notice the dust in the corners, the path of the bristles on the wood. He is, for the first time in months, entirely present in a single task. What is happening in Kevin's brain right now is a shift in dominance from the limbic system to the prefrontal cortex. The limbic system, the ancient emotional center of the brain, is responsible for the flight response that procrastination triggers. It views the looming deadline as a threat, a predator in the tall grass, and it urges Kevin to run, to the phone, to the fridge, to the bed. The prefrontal cortex, the more evolved executive center responsible for planning and decision-making, is the part of Kevin that wants to work. But the prefrontal cortex is expensive to run. It requires energy. The limbic system is fast and cheap. When Kevin is paralyzed, his limbic system has hijacked the controls. The Roman method of physical rote labor, Industria, acts as a neurological reset. By engaging the body in a simple repetitive task, he lowers the cognitive load. He stops feeding the amygdala's panic signal with rumination. He forces the brain to engage with the physical world, which grounds the nervous system. This is why the 5-second rule failed him earlier. It tried to launch him from a state of panic into a state of high-level executive function in 0 seconds. It is like trying to jump from a dead stop into a sprint. You pull a hamstring. The sweeping is the warm-up. It bridges the gap. It creates the internal furnace of action. Frank watches him. He sees the tension leaving Kevin's shoulders. He sees the rhythm establish itself. He does not praise him. He simply says, "You missed a spot." Kevin goes back. He misses a spot because his mind drifted again. He realizes that the drift was a moment of thinking about the future, not the present. This is the second teaching, the uncertainty of destination. Kevin has been paralyzed by the size of the mountain, the promotion, the career, the life strategy. He is trying to summit Everest in his mind while standing in his apartment. The mind is a restless animal, Frank says later, as Kevin prepares to leave for his real job. You try to conquer the world before you have conquered the floor. You look at the horizon and you trip over your own feet. Kevin wipes the sweat from his forehead. I have a big project at work. I don't know where to start. Frank hands him a bottle of water. You start where you are. You do not build a wall. You lay one brick, and then you lay it perfectly. Then you lay the next. Kevin goes to work that morning, exhausted but strangely alert. He sits at his desk. The optimization project, a sprawling mess of route analysis and carrier contracts, looms on his screen. Usually, this is where he freezes. He sees the complexity. He feels the threat. The limbic system screams to check his email, but he remembers the broom. He remembers the dust. He closes the tabs. He turns off the phone. He creates a vacuum. He decides to lay one brick. He will not do the project. He will open the spreadsheet for Route 40. Just open it. That is all. He opens the file. He stares at the numbers. He wants to run. He stays. He highlights one column. He adjusts one formula. The internal furnace flickers to life. He adjusts a second. 30 minutes pass. He has completed a small section of the analysis. It is not the whole project, but it is longer than nothing. He feels a surge of dopamine, the brain's reward for completing a microtask. The loop of avoidance is broken temporarily by the Roman refusal to look at the horizon. Over the next few weeks, a routine establishes itself. Kevin wakes early. He sweeps the floor at the dojo. He listens to Frank's brief cryptic corrections. He goes to work. He applies the bricklaying mentality. He begins to make progress on the project. The paralysis lifts. He feels a sense of governance returning. He is becoming, in his own small way, a soldier of his own life. He is practicing disciplina, but the system is fragile. It relies on the environment remaining constant. It relies on the silence of the dojo and the structured nature of his spreadsheets. He is building his fortress on a foundation he does not yet understand. He thinks the power comes from the routine itself, rather than the philosophy underneath it. He thinks he has fixed the glitch. 2 months into this new regime, the plateau arrives. The initial novelty of the Roman way wears off. The progress on the project slows as the work becomes harder, requiring complex decisions rather than just data entry. He hits a snag in the carrier contracts that he cannot brick his way out of. He needs to make a phone call he has been avoiding, a confrontation with a difficult vendor. The internal furnace sputters. The limbic system, which has been lying in wait, senses weakness. The fear returns. On a Tuesday afternoon, the disruption occurs. Kevin is sitting at his desk, staring at the contract on his screen. He is doing fake work, formatting the font, adjusting the margins, anything to avoid the difficult call he needs to make. He is busy, but he is not effective. He has forgotten Severitas. He has lost the gravity of the situation. He is drifting. His supervisor walks by and drops a folder on his desk. It is the preliminary data for the performance review. It is thin, too thin. The supervisor doesn't say anything. He just taps the folder with a finger and keeps walking. Kevin opens it. The feedback is mediocre. Reliable attendance, it says. Needs improvement in proactive problem solving. It acknowledges he is present, but it highlights the absence of Industria in the difficult moments. He has been sweeping the floor, but he has stopped building the wall. Kevin stares at the paper. The silence of the office suddenly feels oppressive. The rattle of the air conditioning returns, louder than before. He feels the chest tightening, the old familiar sensation of the walls closing in. He realizes he has not conquered his procrastination. He has merely domesticated it. He has built a routine that works when things are easy, but collapses when the stakes rise. He needs a resource he does not have, the ability to endure the discomfort of the difficult call. He promises himself he will make the call in 5 minutes. He knows, deep down, that he won't. He realizes his history of avoidance has made this promise empty. The Roman way he thought he had mastered was just a costume he was wearing. He has not yet become a soldier. He is still just a logistics coordinator in a Memphis office, terrified of a telephone. The night air in Memphis is thick, a soup of humidity and diesel fumes, but Kevin doesn't notice. He drives back to the dojo, the review folder empty on the passenger seat beside him. The closed sign hangs in the door, but the lights are on. He pushes inside. Frank is kneeling in the center of the floor, polishing a long wooden staff. The sound of the cloth rubbing against the grain is the only noise in the room. Kevin stands in the doorway, breathing hard, not from exertion, but from the crushing weight of the realization that he is a fraud. "I did the work," Kevin says, his voice cracking. "I swept. I showed up. It didn't matter." Frank does not look up. He continues polishing. "You swept the floor. You did not build the wall. They say I'm mediocre. They say I lack initiative. You do," Frank says. The words are sharp, cutting through the self-pity. He finally looks up. "You came here to learn how to feel motivated. That is a child's game. You are not struggling with laziness, Kevin. You are struggling with fear. You thought the routine would save you. The routine is just the sharpening of the sword. It is not the swing." Kevin stares at him. "Then what is the swing?" Frank sets the staff down. He stands, his movements slow and deliberate. "The crisis you faced today, the fear of the phone call, that was the real war. The Romans did not train for the parade. They trained for the moment the line broke. You wanted the panic to stop, but panic is just energy. You have been trying to sedate yourself. You need to govern." "I don't know if I can make that call," Kevin whispers. "That is the answer to the question I asked you the first day," Frank says. "You are protecting yourself from the burden of command. You want the rank of a coordinator without the weight of a leader. You think if you don't try, you can't fail, but you have failed by doing nothing." Frank points a finger at the door. "Go, make the call. Do not sleep until it is done. If you fail moving forward. That is the only difference between a soldier and a corpse. Kevin leaves. There is no pep talk, no hand on the shoulder, just the command. The silence of the dojo stays with him, a heavy, expectant weight on his back. The drive home is a blur. The internal furnace is no longer a warm, productive glow. It is a cold, hard fire in his gut. He enters his apartment. The wobble of the ceiling fan still mocks him, but he doesn't turn on the TV. He doesn't open a podcast. He sits at his desk. The clock reads 9:14 p.m. The vendor he needs to call is notoriously difficult, a man named Salty who hates late adjustments to routes. The phone feels like a brick in his hand. He dials, it rings. A part of him prays for voicemail. The line clicks. A gruff voice answers. Kevin's throat tightens. The old voice in his head screams at him to hang up, to say it was a mistake, to flee back into the safety of procrastination. He remembers Frank's words, "You have failed by doing nothing." He pushes through the tightness. "Mr. Salty, this is Kevin Taylor with the regional routes," he says. His voice shakes, but he keeps talking. He explains the error. He explains the fix. He doesn't make excuses. He waits for the yelling. It comes. He lets it wash over him. He doesn't defend himself. He just agrees to the solution. The call ends. It lasts 4 minutes. It feels like 4 hours. He hangs up. He is shaking, but the paralysis is gone. In its place is a raw, scraping sensation. He did the hard thing. He looks at the spreadsheet. It is not finished. He begins to type. He corrects the data for the vendor. He sends the email. He logs the interaction. It is 9:45 p.m. He has done more in 30 minutes of fear than he did in 3 weeks of sweeping. The night stretches on. He doesn't stop. He moves to the next task, the one he had labeled pending for 2 weeks. The accretion of identity begins. Every keystroke is a vote for Kevin the operator, not Kevin the boy. The Roman concept of Severitas clicks into place. Severity is not cruelty. It is the refusal to be soft with oneself. He is learning that the discomfort of the work is not a signal to stop. It is the texture of the wall being built. He works until 1 a.m. When he finally crawls into bed, he does not have the dopamine high of a victory. He has the quiet, heavy exhaustion of a soldier who has survived the skirmish. The resolution arrives not with a promotion party, but with a quiet email 2 days later. The vendor accepted the changes. The routes are optimized. The supervisor stops by Kevin's desk. He doesn't say much. He just looks at the updated manifest, checks a box, and gives a single nod. "Good catch on the Salty contract," he says. "That could have cost us." He walks away. There is no parade. But for Kevin, the silence of the office feels different. It no longer feels like a vacuum waiting to crush him. It feels like a room he occupies with authority. He realizes the why was missing. He was working to avoid the bad review, to avoid the shame. That is panic. He switched to working to solve the problem, to serve the mission. That is the purpose. The system works, but it requires a reason that exists outside of his own feelings. Weeks pass. The performance review concludes. Kevin keeps his job. The threat of demotion fades. The urgency evaporates. This is the most dangerous time. The external pressure that forced him to act is gone. The real war is over. Now comes the occupation. It is a Saturday morning. The sun is bright over the Mississippi Delta. Kevin sits on his couch. The TV remote is on the cushion beside him. The Xbox controller is on the table. His phone is charged. The apartment is quiet. The AC hums a low, seductive song. "You did it," the comfort whispers. "You solved the crisis. You deserve to rest. Scroll the feed. Play the game. You can start again on Monday." The temptation is physical. It is a longing in his bones for the numbness of the scroll. The old neural pathways are deep grooves in his brain, well-worn and easy to slide into. The dopamine hit of the video game is right there. It promises safety. It promises the absence of struggle. Kevin picks up the remote. He feels the smooth plastic. He remembers the Roman legionary. The legionary did not lay down his sword when the battle was won. He laid down his sword when the campaign was over, and even then he built the fort. He recalls Frank's distinction between the parade and the training. The test isn't the crisis. The test is the silence. He puts the remote down. It takes effort. He stands up. He walks to the desk. There is no deadline today. There is no angry vendor. He opens his laptop. He pulls up a course on advanced logistics certification that he has been meaning to start for a year. He begins to watch the first module. He takes notes. The pen scratches against the paper. The science validates this moment. Identity is not built in the heat of battle. It is built in the silence of routine. When the external reward is gone, the action itself becomes the definition of the self. He is no longer a man who procrastinates. He is a man who works. The neural pathway begins to groove itself not around fear, but around agency. 3 years later, the logistics hub is louder now, with bigger contracts moving through the terminals. Kevin stands in the main office. He is 26. He wears a headset, coordinating a triple-stack shipment to Nashville. The chaos of the yard is visible through the glass, forklifts moving, trucks idling, the dust rising in clouds. He is calm. He directs a driver with a few clipped, precise sentences. The driver nods and moves. A younger coordinator, a new hire named Sarah, watches him from the adjacent desk. She is overwhelmed, her screen a mess of red flags. She asks him how he stays so calm. Kevin looks at her. He sees the fear in her eyes, the same fear that used to paralyze him in his apartment on Summer Avenue. "I just sweep the floor," he says. She looks confused. He doesn't explain. He turns back to his screen. He has not visited Frank in months, but the lessons are no longer lessons. They are reflexes. He thinks back to the peeling wallpaper, the wobbly fan. He fixed the fan last week. It was a small thing, tightening a screw, but it symbolized the shift. He no longer lives in a house of entropy. He governs his territory. The screen shows a route delay, a minor crisis. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't reach for his phone. He solves it. You watched Kevin because you saw yourself in the wreckage of his stagnation. You saw a man waiting for the world to force him to move. The Romans understood that this passivity is the natural state of the untrained mind. We default to comfort because our biology demands we conserve energy. But you are not a beast in the wild. You are a builder in a civilization. Procrastination is not a moral failing. It is not a disease you catch. It is a signal. It is the check engine light on the dashboard of your life, telling you that your internal governance has failed. It tells you that you have abandoned the post. Kevin didn't find a magic pill. He found a system. Severitas to face reality. Disciplina to build the routine. Industria to do the work when the feeling was gone. The system did not care about his feelings. It cared only about the action. And in the action, he found the man he was trying to be. You are standing in the doorway. The broom is right there. The phone call is right there. The system is waiting. It worked 2,000 years ago. It worked for Kevin. It will work for you. But the system cannot start itself. If you knew that the next 30 minutes of focus would change the trajectory of your entire year, would you still choose to scroll? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you are ready to stop waiting for the crisis and start building the fortress, subscribe. We have more walls to build.